according to the military law orders, like the parents are not allowed to be during the interrogation of the child. And the majority of the arrests happen in midnight hours, where the child is being dragged from his home, from his bed, while his eyes are blindfolded and his hands are tied behind his back.
حربا عالمية ثانية قد حصلت هنا. الدمار شمل المنازل السكنية هنا، تم استهداف أيضا.
Hello, my name is Stanley Heller. Welcome to The Struggle. Today we'll be talking about another refugee in sanctuary and news about Syria, but we'll start and feature a talk by a Palestinian lawyer who defends children arrested and mistreated by Israeli authorities.
Unfortunately, the Palestinian children are being criminalized by the Israeli military forces and authorities. The criminalization approach that the Israeli system is a tool that they use in order to control the Palestinian population in general, and especially the children population that lives inside the Palestinian society. So as a lawyer, we face a lot of challenges, and I'm a Palestinian lawyer who has Israeli citizenship, so I have the double standards challenges that I face during my job as a lawyer defending the Palestinian children. And the challenges start from the first moment of the child's arrest, where we try to track and trace the child, and it can take a lot. It can take a lot of time until we get into the child, and sometimes we don't get to the child in order to give the proper consultation before entering his interrogation, and we just see the child in the military court halls. Unfortunately, like the Israeli system does not allow the parents to be according to the military law orders, like the parents are not allowed to be during the interrogation of the child. And the majority of the arrests happen in midnight hours, where the child is being dragged from his home, from his bed, while his eyes are blindfolded and his hands are tied behind his back, and then he will be transferred to the interrogation center. Also, the child must be transferred directly, but the Israeli forces take advantage of the time that the child is alone with a member of the soldiers, and just take the child before getting to the interrogation center to multiple stops, like where they put the child in an open space in a military base, and he's being put there alone, disconnected from the outside world, and not really understanding where is he, the place he is in, and the context that he was put in. The language obstacle is like an obstacle that I face, we face, they face, the parents face, also during the hearings of the children, because the military court is it's combined from a military judge, a soldier translator, and all the members working in the military court are militarized. So except of the defend lawyers. So the language obstacle is also a challenge that they face during their interrogation, because not always the interrogator speaks the Arabic native language, where the and the child is just don't really understand the questions as he should. And we document that the majority of the torture and ill treatment measures that the Israeli forces conduct on the children is partly happened during the first period of the detention, where the child is alone without any presence of his parents or a lawyer presence. And we also face the challenge of the as Brad explained about the last result as that the court need to take into consideration while hearing a child case. For example, Fawzi's Genedi case, his picture was here for a couple of minutes. So he was arrested in 2017 after the declare of Trump's regarding moving the embassy to Jerusalem, and he was only in his way to his aunt's house while he was arrested violently by more than 15 members of the Israeli soldiers, causing him a shoulder injury and bruises. And we had a battle at court to release Fawzi, but he only got released after almost 3 weeks with a very high amount of bail, which was $3,000. He needed to raise in order to get released, he or his family. So even when the children are being released from the court, they are being released in a very high amount of bills that the family doesn't necessarily have or take a lot of time to raise. Regarding Obaida's case, and I started my talking that Palestinian children are being criminalized. Obaida Junaidi, I met him when I first met him. He was only 14 years old, and it was also in 2017. And he was arrested almost for 2 months, where we fought during his trial, and eventually he got acquitted. We managed to acquit him from his last charge, and he was charged with throwing stones, and he was acquitted. And as you all know, the throwing stones charge is the classical charge that the Palestinian children as usually are being accused with. And he was acquitted, but he was arrested twice after he was released. And on his third arrest was 1 day after releasing his online short movie that you also know. And he got eventually released after 2 days without any conditions, meaning that Palestinian children are really being targeted, criminalized, and they are being put in a place where they don't have the chance to plan a brighter future along with their families. As a lawyer, also working on such cases, we face I face the challenge of not having the political argument part of my legal argument, whereas the political context is being put out of the whole legal argument, where the cause of the detention is obviously occupation, but we cannot like argue that such an argument, because if we do, the child will eventually get more sentence than he may get. Another issue that we face is the complicity of the legal procedure that by itself can and may violate the child's rights. The periods, according to the military order, where the Palestinian children are being trialed with, the period of time that the child may be brought in front of a judge is a long period of time, depending on the child's age, but it can get until 72 hours. So imagine a child alone without any family member accompany or a lawyer being jailed alone, and during this very hard first hours. What else?
Talk about the challenges you faced as a lawyer.
I'm talking. Like me myself, like me and my colleagues, of course, as we work defending Palestinian children in military courts and defending their rights, we are being attacked also personally and institutionally by the Israeli military persecutors, judges, and also other right-wing activists and organizations that targets the Palestinian human rights organizations. So this is also part, like not only the children are being targeted, but also the people who wants to defend them are being targeted also, and their organizations. And this proves the feeling that it's a policy of a policy that the Israeli is conducting in order to rather not enforce law but control the population as they occupy, as they do continue its occupation.
There are 70 different laws that have to do with throwing a stone. Can you explain that?
Did you say
well,
that?
I mean, it's really...
We'll have to review the tape of the webinar.
It was very significant to me, and it really stuck with me, because it's not just throwing a stone. The worst offense is throwing a stone at an officer because you...
So, I'll
you dishonor him.
Yeah, so we'll talk about, so, Israeli military law, right, there's, and you can stay up here, we can take some questions and then talk about this. So Israeli military law, right, so since it became a reality in 1967, there's over 1,700 military orders that make up that law, right? Military law is an military commander who has executive, judicial, legislative authority. Essentially, they write something on a piece of paper, sign it, and that becomes the law that applies in the occupied territory. So, kind of on the structural piece, Palestinians have no say in the laws that apply to them. They have no say in the laws that are implemented. They don't vote for anybody that create the laws. Right? There's sort of no democratic process around the legal framework that applies. Within that, right, the sort of most relevant piece of the military law for the detention of children is Military Order 1651, and so the title is Order Regarding Security Offenses. So security offenses are sort of the occupation-related criminal law. So you have kind of a range of offenses included there. Some look very similar to criminal code, here in Connecticut, back in New York, where I'm from. You have homicide, assault, sort of a variety of different property crimes and damage to property. But then you have these specific kind of political offenses. So being a member of a banned organization, right? Things that would be protected under U.S. constitutional law as free speech or maybe some other provision. are criminalized in the military law. So, for example, almost every single Palestinian political party is a banned organization under the military law. So the Palestinian president, Mahmoud Abbas, he's a member of the Fatah party. His party is a banned organization under the military law. So Israeli forces could arrest him at any time for being a member of a banned organization, right? So it gives you a sense of the scope and breadth of who can be targeted. And it's essentially anybody. So specific to children, right, you have one of those more typical criminal offenses that we would expect to see in a criminal code, but then you also have these specific offenses, which throwing stones is a specific offense under the military law. You know, if Shana and I go out, we have a dust up here over something, we go out in the parking lot, and I pick up a stone, I throw it at her, maybe I hit her in the face, maybe I miss. She calls the police, right? The police come down, they probably talk to some of you, what happened, do a bit of evidence gathering, fact gathering, and then Shana says, I want to press charges, right? If that happens, they're not pressing charges for throwing stones, right? It's assault, battery, it's something else, a more general offense. So the fact that that charge exists in the military law sort of tells you what the goal of the law is for. There's sort of two specific provisions around throwing stones. So if you throw stones at, so how many people have been to the West Bank, to Jerusalem, seen the concrete separation wall, right? So if you throw a stone at the separation wall, that comes with a potential 10-year maximum sentence under the military law, right? You don't have to actually hit the wall, cause damage to the wall, do anything like, you might not even be able to throw that well, right? And you, it's just the conduct of throwing a stone without any sort of impact of any sort, right? That's what's criminalized in the military law. If you throw a stone into into traffic, for example, a moving object, right? That comes with a potential 20-year maximum sentence under the military law. So that's the legal framework. And then I think that the other piece that I talk about frequently is sort of my, so reading the military, so Military Order 1651, and seeing what's included in there. I think the one thing that has always, like the first time that I looked at this particular military order, there was one provision that stood out because they have specific conduct towards soldiers that's criminalized separately in the military law. And there's sort of three tiers. There's assaulting an officer, or assaulting a soldier. I think it comes with a 7 or 10-year maximum sentence. And then sort of the lower tier is insulting the honor of a soldier, which comes with a potential 1-year maximum sentence. And to have any sense of what that looks like, right, is virtually impossible, right? And I think that's important, right? That's military law, right? Is insulting the honor of a soldier, not showing your ID fast enough at a checkpoint? Is it smiling at a soldier at his checkpoint? Is it not smiling, right? What does that even mean, right? And you could be arrested by a soldier, and that could be the justification. And the reality is that most of the cases that Farah represents, most of the kids charged in the military courts, they're arrested on suspicion, right? There's not this evidence gathering process where, we go back to the example of me hitting Shana in the face with a rock. And the police come, right? There would be some fact finding they would do that then would sort of justify taking me into custody and placing charges against me. That independent oversight, evidence gathering, right? There rarely are warrants in the cases that we represent. Kids are arrested on suspicion because soldiers can essentially arrest anybody that they think has thrown a stone, last week, 3 weeks ago, 3 months ago, 6 months ago. Right? They don't have to be 100% sure. They don't have to be 50% sure. They're 20%, 5%. That's enough to justify that detention. They sign an affidavit saying, I saw, Al-Baida al-Jawabra throwing a stone in October 2015. right? That's enough. Detained in the middle of the night, put in a military jeep, bound and blindfolded, transferred around the West Bank. Maybe they stop at a military base, pulled out, put on the ground. Eventually they find themselves in an interrogation center, often in a police station in an Israeli settlement, where they're interrogated without access to counsel, without their parents present. And that interrogation is all about creating some type of incriminating evidence, statement, that they can pass to a military prosecutor so they can actually prosecute the child in a military court. I mean, so the process is not set up to hold individuals accountable for individual conduct. Right? It really is this process, and you see it through the systematic ill treatment, physical violence that kids face, the due process denials, right? The fact that children are alone for the first 24 or 48 hours after they're detained, right? To gather that incriminating piece. So that there is something, an evidentiary basis in the military courts to then charge the child. Kids throw stones, kids don't throw stones. Right? It sort of doesn't matter. They get arrested either way. It really comes down to the community that the child lives in. Right? There's specific communities where adolescent boys are targeted for arrests. That's it. Right? If you live in a community that's near a settlement, near one of the settler roads, near the separation barrier, military base, anywhere where the occupation has its presence, these are the communities being targeted for arrest.
More of No Way to Treat a Child in our next program. You may recall an earlier program where we covered Sujitno Sujuti's first moments of freedom after leaving sanctuary in a Meriden church, which he had lived in for 600 days. At the press conference, another person in sanctuary was mentioned, Nelson Pinos.
Hey, I'm Alo from the Kinetic Immigrant Rights Alliance, or CIRA. For past almost 600 days, we've known each other before that for a few years. I've seen Suhitno as an advocate in a previous life, in a previous job. Coming to the Capitol, advocate for healthcare access, advocate for immigrants' rights, civil rights, for all people. And then I came to know you better because you're treated like this. You're treated like this, and you're separated from the same communities that you've spent most time of your life here in this country fighting for. You've always been an advocate, and that's always how I've known you. You continue to be an advocate for yourself and others, and I know you're going to continue to be one. I remember one of the first things Suhitno says why he wants to be able to come out is so he can help people who are in a similar situation. And there is someone in a similar situation. We still have Nelson, that's in sanctuary at First and Summerfield, United Methodist Church in New Haven, who's still suffering under these same conditions that the ICE and our systems have put him under. And these are the injustices. When we talk about sanctuary, it's not just sanctuary in here. This all needs to be sanctuary. This all needs to be sanctuary.
Vanessa, at the end of the press conference, there was chants, "Free Nelson now." Can you talk about that situation?
So right now, Nelson is a little over 550 days in sanctuary in New Haven, and we're still waiting for a response from Minnesota 8th Circuit Court. We were there a couple weeks ago the lawyers argued on behalf of Nelson for Nelson to have his day in court. Since the 26 years that he's been here, he's never had his day in court. He was ordered deported and he didn't know, and he's been in removal proceedings ever since. And so right now it's just a quiet wait until we hear back from Minnesota if they're going to reopen Nelson's case, and which would allow him to leave the church, or if they're not going to.
What country is he from?
Ecuador.
And what church is he in?
He's at First and Summerfield United Methodist Church in New Haven.
In New Haven. And he didn't have papers, and so when did this all start?
This originated 26 years ago. Nelson came into this country at the age of 19 and was apprehended during a raid and released. And when he was released, he was never fully aware that he had to show up to court. Documents were not sent to the proper address. And so Nelson and didn't show up, and he was ordered deported without knowing until years later when he tried to adjust his status. And I think it's something that's been hanging over his head for some time, a long time without him knowing, and in the last few years he was regularly doing check-ins and everything was fine until the sudden change of administration, and then he was ordered to be just deported again on November 30th, 2017, and has been in sanctuary since.
And again, how many days approximately is that?
A little over 550 days.
550. And you're an attorney?
No, I am not. I'm a community organizer in New Haven.
With what group?
With Connecticut Bill Fund and Unidad Latina next year.
An entire neighborhood flattened in Idlib, Syria by Assad or Russian bombs. The report is done on June 14th by Hadi Abdullah. There are no English subtitles, but you'll understand what's going on from the tone of his voice.
في الصور دمار مرعب وكأن حربا عالمية ثانية قد حصلت هنا. الدمار شمل المنازل السكنية هنا. تم استهداف أيضا النقطة الطبية في بلدة إحسم قبل قليل بغارات جوية أدت لتدمير هذه النقطة وخروجها عن الخدمة بشكل كامل. المنازل السكنية تدمرت بشكل كامل. نحن نلاحظ أن حيا بأكمله قد أصبح على الأرض تماما.
This little clip has subtitles. A man whose house was blown up remains defiant of the dictator Assad.
ليك يا بشار علاقتي ضربت لنا دورنا بس ضل عنا أرض عرفت نحن بنعمرها بدك ترحل هي الأرض إلنا إذا ما بضل عنا دور ما بضل عنا شيء بدنا نقعد على الأرض أنت مالك شيء هون بدك تروح وأنا عم بقول لك بدك تروح وبكرة الأيام تثبت لك الله يلعن روح أبوك على روحك يا كلب وكل واحد معك.
These photos are from Germany of a protest of a plan to send some refugees back to Assad prisons. This is from London. People who creatively are using a projector to put these images on hospital walls. This message is Putin, this is not a target. These are two children from Idlib. There are still things that can be done to show solidarity with Syrians, demands that can be made of politicians. First off, that Syrian refugees be allowed to enter this country. For more, go to the website of thestruggle.org and see a list of practical, peaceful proposals. That's our program for today. See you next week at this time. I'm Stanley Heller for The Struggle.